Every evening, just as the clock struck 7, Michael would take a short break from his duties at the towering office building where he worked as a janitor. The building buzzed with activity during the day, executives rushing to meetings, employees chatting by the water cooler, and interns frantically carrying stacks of papers. But by nightfall the energy faded, leaving behind an eerie quietness that echoed through the empty hallways. Michael didn't mind the silence, in fact he preferred it. It gave him time to think, to reflect on life without interruptions. His favorite spot was the cafeteria, a large room filled with round tables and uncomfortable plastic chairs. At this hour, it was almost always deserted, except for the occasional straggler typing furiously on their laptop or sipping reheated coffee while finishing up work. On one particular evening, as Michael settled into his usual corner with a steaming cup of instant coffee, something unusual caught his attention. Sitting alone near the window was a man dressed impeccably in a tailored navy blue suit. Everything about him screamed importance. The polished leather shoes, the gold watch peeking out from under his sleeve, the way he carried himself with an air of authority. Yet there he was, eating what looked like a plain ham sandwich wrapped in crinkled brown paper. Michael squinted slightly, trying to place the face. Then it hit him. This wasn't just any man. This was Richard Langley, the CEO of the company. Michael had seen pictures of him before, in newsletters, on posters announcing new initiatives, and even on the giant screen during annual meetings. He was the man everyone talked about, the one who had turned the struggling business into a thriving empire. And yet here he was, sitting quietly in the dimly lit cafeteria, completely unnoticed by anyone else. Michael couldn't help but feel intrigued. Why would someone like Richard Langley choose to eat alone in such an ordinary setting? Didn't people like him have personal chefs or assistants to cater to their every need? Shouldn't he be dining at some fancy restaurant downtown instead of munching on a sandwich in a corporate cafeteria? These questions swirled in Michael's mind as he watched Richard intently. There was no entourage surrounding him, no security detail hovering nearby. Just a man, a sandwich, and a glass of water. It was strange, almost surreal. Michael found himself wondering if Richard came here often or if this was just a one-time thing. The next few minutes passed slowly as Michael debated whether to approach him or not. On one hand, Richard was practically untouchable, a figurehead of power and success. On the other hand, he seemed so human, vulnerable even. For reasons he couldn't quite explain, Michael felt drawn to him. Perhaps it was the simplicity of the moment, the idea that someone so accomplished could find solace in something as mundane as a cafeteria dinner. Or maybe it was the loneliness that radiated off Richard, subtle, yet unmistakable. Whatever it was, Michael decided to act on impulse. He grabbed a tray from the counter, poured 2 cups of coffee, and walked over to Richard's table, his heart pounding nervously. "Mind if I join you?" Michael asked hesitantly, clutching the tray tightly. Richard looked up, startled. Clearly, he hadn't expected anyone to interrupt his solitude. For a brief second, their eyes met, and Michael worried he might have overstepped. But then Richard smiled faintly and nodded. "Sure," he replied, gesturing toward the empty seat across from him. Michael exhaled in relief and sat down, placing 1 cup of coffee in front of Richard. Neither of them spoke immediately. The silence stretched between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Finally, Michael broke it. "You always come here this late?" he asked, his voice tentative. Richard chuckled softly, taking a sip of his coffee. "Yeah, I guess you could say it's become a habit." Michael nodded, unsure of what else to say. He studied Richard closely, noticing the fine lines around his eyes and the slight weariness in his expression. Up close, he didn't seem like the larger-than-life figure Michael had imagined him to be. Instead, he appeared more real, more relatable. Encouraged by Richard's friendly demeanor, Michael continued, "It's kind of surprising to see you here. I mean, most people probably wouldn't expect the CEO to hang out in the cafeteria." Richard shrugged, leaning back in his chair. "That's exactly why I come here. No expectations, no pressure, just peace." His words lingered in the air, resonating deeply with Michael. Peace. That was something Michael understood all too well. After years of working long hours, dealing with demanding bosses and juggling responsibilities, he cherished moments of calm more than anything else. Maybe that's why he kept returning to the cafeteria each night, to escape the chaos of his daily life, even if only for a little while. Seeing Richard do the same made him realize they weren't so different after all. As the conversation unfolded, Michael learned bits and pieces about Richard's life. He spoke about the challenges of leading a massive organization, the constant scrutiny from shareholders, and the weight of making decisions that impacted thousands of lives. Yet despite all the glamour and prestige associated with his position, Richard admitted that he often felt isolated. "People treat me differently because of my title," he said thoughtfully. "They either idolize me or resent me. Hardly anyone sees me as just a person." Michael listened carefully, absorbing every word. He couldn't imagine what it must feel like to carry such immense responsibility, to constantly be in the spotlight. In many ways, Richard's struggles reminded him of his own battles, with self-doubt, with feeling invisible. Though their circumstances were worlds apart, the underlying emotions were strikingly similar. By the end of their conversation, Michael felt a newfound respect for Richard, not just as a leader, but as a human being. Over the next few days, Michael couldn't stop thinking about that encounter. He replayed the conversation in his head, analyzing every detail. What had started as mere curiosity had evolved into genuine admiration. Richard wasn't just a powerful executive. He was someone who valued authenticity and connection. Someone who sought refuge in the simplest of places. Someone who, despite his achievements, still yearned for understanding. Determined to learn more, Michael returned to the cafeteria the following evening, hoping to catch another glimpse of Richard. To his delight, the CEO arrived right on schedule, carrying the same brown paper bag. This time Michael approached him without hesitation. "Hey," he greeted warmly, holding out a fresh cup of coffee. Richard grinned, recognizing him instantly. "Back again, huh? Guess you're stuck with me now," Michael joked, taking a seat. From that moment on, their nightly meetings became a ritual, a sacred space where titles and roles ceased to matter. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing stories, laughter, and occasionally their fears. Through these conversations, Michael discovered parts of himself he had long forgotten, dreams buried beneath years of monotony, aspirations waiting to be reignited. And Richard, in turn, found a rare kind of companionship, one that reminded him of the beauty and simplicity. Little did they know this unexpected friendship would change both their lives forever. As the days turned into weeks, Michael and Richard's nightly meetings in the cafeteria became a cherished routine. Each evening, without fail, they would sit at the same table near the window, sharing cups of coffee and conversation. At first, their talks revolved around surface-level topics, weather forecasts, sports scores, or amusing anecdotes from their respective days. But as trust grew between them, the conversations deepened. Richard began opening up about the challenges he faced as CEO, revealing layers of vulnerability that Michael hadn't anticipated. The polished exterior Richard presented to the world masked a man burdened by immense responsibility and isolation. One evening, after finishing his sandwich, Richard leaned back in his chair and sighed heavily. "You know," he said, staring out the window at the city lights below. "People think my life is perfect. They see the suit, the office, the title, and assume I have it all figured out. But the truth is, it's exhausting." Michael listened intently, sensing the weight behind Richard's words. He had never imagined someone like Richard could feel overwhelmed. To the outside world, he was a symbol of success, a man who seemed to have everything under control. Yet here he was, admitting that even he struggled to keep up with the demands of his role. Richard went on to explain how every decision he made carried consequences far beyond what most people could comprehend. "When I sign off on a project, it's not just about numbers on a spreadsheet," he said, his voice tinged with both pride and frustration. "It affects jobs, families, entire communities. And no matter how hard I try, there's always someone who disagrees, who criticizes, who thinks I should have done something differently." Michael nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of Richard's position. Though his own job as a janitor might seem insignificant compared to running a multinational corporation, he knew what it felt like to carry responsibility. Every day, he ensured the building was clean and safe for its occupants, knowing that any oversight could lead to problems. In their own ways, both men bore burdens tied to their roles. What struck Michael most was Richard's humility. Despite his wealth and influence, he never acted superior or condescending. Instead, he treated Michael as an equal, valuing his perspective, and genuinely listening when he spoke. This mutual respect formed the foundation of their friendship. Over time, Michael started sharing pieces of his own life. His struggles as a single father raising 2 kids, the sacrifices he'd made to provide for his family, and the dreams he'd put on hold. Richard listened attentively, often offering advice or simply nodding in solidarity. Their bond transcended their vastly different backgrounds, proving that connection wasn't defined by titles or status, but by shared humanity. One night, as they sat sipping their coffee, Michael mustered the courage to ask a question that had been lingering in his mind. "Why do you keep coming back here?" he asked hesitantly. "I mean, you're the CEO, you could eat anywhere. Fancy restaurants, private clubs, whatever. Why this place?" Richard paused, considering the question before answering. "Because places like this remind me of who I really am," he said finally, his tone thoughtful. "Out there I'm Mr. Langley, the guy everyone expects things from. But in here, I'm just Richard. No expectations, no judgment, just me." Michael nodded, appreciating the honesty in Richard's response. He understood the appeal of finding a space where one could be authentic, free from societal pressures. For Michael, the cafeteria served a similar purpose. It was his sanctuary, a place to unwind after hours of physical labor. Knowing that Richard sought refuge in the same spot made him feel less alone in his quest for simplicity. Their conversations weren't always serious. Sometimes they laughed about trivial matters or debated lightheartedly over which sports team was better. These moments of levity balanced the heavier discussions, creating a dynamic that kept their friendship fresh and engaging. One evening, Richard surprised Michael by bringing dessert, a small box of pastries from a bakery downtown. "Thought we could use a change from plain sandwiches," he joked, setting the box on the table. Michael grinned, grateful for the gesture. As they sampled the treats, they joked about opening a cafe together someday, serving coffee and pastries to weary office workers. Neither realized how much that playful idea would stick with Michael in the days to come. Over time, Michael noticed subtle changes within himself. Talking to Richard reignited a spark he thought had long faded, a desire to pursue his own dreams. Years ago, before life's responsibilities took over, Michael had dreamed of owning a cafe. He envisioned a cozy space where people could gather, share stories, and find comfort in good food and warm company. But practicality had intervened, forcing him to prioritize stability over passion. Now inspired by Richard's determination and encouragement, Michael found himself revisiting those aspirations. He began sketching rough plans during his breaks, jotting down ideas for menu items and interior designs. At first, he kept these thoughts to himself, unsure if they were realistic, but eventually, curiosity got the better of him. One evening, armed with a notebook filled with doodles and notes, Michael showed Richard his sketches. "What do you think?" he asked nervously, sliding the notebook across the table. Richard studied the pages carefully, his expression thoughtful. When he finally looked up, his eyes sparkled with excitement. "This is incredible," he said earnestly. "You should definitely pursue it. If anyone can make this happen, it's you." His words hit Michael like a bolt of lightning, igniting a fire within him. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe that his dream wasn't impossible. Encouraged by Richard's support, Michael took the first steps toward turning his vision into reality. He enrolled in online courses to learn the basics of entrepreneurship, budgeting, and customer service. During his lunch breaks, he visited local cafes, observing how they operated and taking mental notes. He even started experimenting with recipes at home, testing flavors and combinations until he perfected them. Though progress was slow, Michael remained determined, fueled by the belief that he was capable of achieving something meaningful. Meanwhile, Richard watched Michael's transformation with admiration. Seeing someone take bold steps toward their dreams reminded him of his younger self, when he too had dared to chase ambitious goals. Inspired by Michael's dedication, Richard offered guidance whenever possible, sharing insights from his own experiences. He advised Michael on securing funding, navigating legal requirements, and marketing strategies. Their partnership blossomed into a mentor-mentee relationship, though neither explicitly labeled it as such. To Michael, Richard wasn't just a friend anymore. He was a source of inspiration and wisdom, someone who believed in him unconditionally. The ripple effects of their friendship extended beyond their personal lives. Richard returned to the office with renewed energy, implementing changes aimed at fostering a more inclusive workplace culture. He encouraged employees to connect beyond their job titles, organizing informal gatherings and team-building activities. He also introduced initiatives to support staff well-being, recognizing the importance of balance in professional and personal lives. These efforts earned him praise from colleagues, many of whom noticed a shift in his leadership style. Gone was the distant, untouchable CEO. In his place stood a leader who valued empathy and authenticity. For Michael, the journey was equally transformative. Pursuing his dream gave him a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, doubts, and moments of frustration, but each challenge only strengthened his resolve. He saved diligently, cutting back on unnecessary expenses and funneling every spare penny into his project. On weekends, he scouted potential locations, imagining how each space could be transformed into the cafe of his dreams. Slowly but surely, the pieces began falling into place. Despite their busy schedules, Michael and Richard continued meeting in the cafeteria, their bond growing stronger with each passing week. Their conversations now centered around updates, Michael sharing his progress, Richard offering feedback and encouragement. Together, they celebrated small victories and brainstormed solutions to obstacles. What started as a chance encounter had evolved into a powerful alliance, rooted in mutual respect and shared ambition. Even as Michael's dream took shape, he never forgot the lessons he'd learned through his friendship with Richard. Success, he realized, wasn't measured solely by achievements or accolades. It was about staying true to oneself, embracing vulnerability, and building connections that transcended superficial differences. And while their paths might diverge in the future, Michael knew that the impact of their friendship would endure, a testament to the extraordinary possibilities that arise when two unlikely souls cross paths in the most ordinary of places. Months passed, and Michael's dream of opening a cafe began to take tangible shape. With Richard's guidance and unwavering support, he navigated the complexities of entrepreneurship step by step. Securing funding was perhaps the biggest hurdle, but even that challenge seemed surmountable with determination. Richard introduced Michael to a network of investors who were impressed by his passion and meticulous planning. One evening, as they sat in their usual spot in the cafeteria, Michael shared the news. He had secured enough capital to lease a small space in a quiet neighborhood. Tears welled up in his eyes as he expressed his gratitude to Richard. "I couldn't have done this without you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Richard simply smiled and patted him on the back. "You did this yourself, Michael. I just pointed you in the right direction." The months that followed were a whirlwind of activity for Michael. He threw himself into transforming the leased space into the cozy cafe he had envisioned. Every detail mattered: the warm lighting, the comfortable seating, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the air. He spent countless hours painting walls, arranging furniture, and testing recipes until everything felt just right. On weekends, Richard would visit the site, rolling up his sleeves to help wherever needed. Though he could have easily sent an assistant or written a check, Richard chose to be present, lending a hand and offering advice. Their camaraderie grew stronger with each passing day, forged through shared sweat and laughter. One afternoon, as they took a break from installing shelves, Richard looked around the nearly finished cafe and nodded approvingly. "This place is going to be amazing," he said, sipping a cup of coffee Michael had brewed using one of his experimental blends. "People are going to love it." Michael grinned, feeling a mix of pride and nervousness. The grand opening was only weeks away, and while excitement buzzed in the air, so did uncertainty. What if no one showed up? What if customers didn't like the food or the ambiance? Sensing Michael's unease, Richard reassured him. "You've poured your heart into this. Trust me, people will feel it when they walk in." Finally, the big day arrived. The cafe, named Corner Table after their nightly meetings in the office cafeteria, opened its doors to the public. Michael stood behind the counter, wiping his sweaty palms on his apron as the first customers trickled in. To his relief and delight, they loved everything about the place: the cozy atmosphere, the friendly service, and the delicious menu. Items quickly became talking points among patrons. Word spread fast, and within days, Corner Table was bustling with locals eager to experience its charm. Richard attended the opening ceremony, shaking hands with customers and congratulating Michael on his success. "You've created something truly special here," he said, his pride evident. For Michael, hearing those words from Richard meant more than any review or accolade ever could. As the cafe gained popularity, Michael found himself busier than ever. Managing staff, overseeing operations, and ensuring customer satisfaction kept him on his toes. Yet despite the long hours, he felt fulfilled in a way he hadn't experienced before. This wasn't just a business, it was a reflection of his hard work, creativity, and resilience. And knowing that Richard had played such a pivotal role in making it happen filled him with immense gratitude. Their friendship remained as strong as ever, though their meetings became less frequent due to their respective commitments. When they did catch up, whether over coffee at Corner Table or during late-night calls, their conversations always carried the same warmth and authenticity. Meanwhile, Richard underwent a transformation of his own. Inspired by Michael's courage to chase his dreams, Richard decided to step down as CEO earlier than planned. He had grown weary of the relentless grind, yearning for a simpler, more meaningful life. Retirement allowed him to focus on mentoring young entrepreneurs, sharing the lessons he'd learned throughout his career. He also dedicated time to volunteering, working closely with organizations that supported underprivileged communities. These new pursuits brought him a sense of fulfillment that money and titles never could. Looking back, he realized how much his friendship with Michael had influenced this decision. Watching Michael build something from scratch reminded him of the importance of purpose over prestige. Despite their differing paths, Michael and Richard stayed connected, their bond transcending professional achievements. They often joked about how their unlikely friendship had begun, with a sandwich and a cup of coffee in a corporate cafeteria. That simple act of kindness had set off a chain reaction, changing both their lives in profound ways. For Michael, it had been the catalyst for pursuing a lifelong dream. For Richard, it had reignited his belief in human connection and the power of staying grounded. Over time, Corner Table became more than just a cafe. It became a community hub. Customers weren't just there for the coffee, they came for the sense of belonging it offered. Michael made sure everyone who walked in felt welcomed, regardless of their background or circumstances. He hosted events like poetry readings, art, exhibitions, and charity fundraisers, turning the cafe into a space where creativity and compassion thrived. Richard attended many of these events, marveling at how far Michael had come since their first meeting. "You've built something bigger than yourself," he told Michael one evening, sipping tea at a corner table. "This place isn't just about coffee, it's about connection." Richard's retirement gave him ample opportunity to reflect on his journey. He thought about the highs and lows, the sacrifices and triumphs, and the lessons he'd learned along the way. One thing stood out above all else: the value of relationships. Throughout his career, he had focused on numbers, strategies, and outcomes, often neglecting the human element. His friendship with Michael had taught him that true success wasn't measured by profit margins or market shares, but by the impact one had on others' lives. It was a lesson he carried with him as he embarked on this new chapter. determined to leave a lasting legacy rooted in kindness and empathy. For Michael, running Corner Table was both rewarding and challenging. There were days when things didn't go as planned, when equipment broke down, supplies ran low, or customers complained. But even on the toughest days, he reminded himself why he had started this venture in the first place. It wasn't just about financial stability or personal achievement. It was about creating a space where people could find joy, comfort, and connection. And every time a customer left with a smile or complimented the food, he knew he was succeeding. Their friendship continued to evolve, adapting to the changes in their lives. Richard visited Corner Table regularly, sometimes bringing friends or colleagues who were curious about the story behind its creation. Michael enjoyed introducing Richard to his loyal patrons, proud to call him not only a mentor but also a dear friend. Together they celebrated milestones, Michael's cafe expanding to multiple locations, Richard's mentoring program gaining recognition, and supported each other through challenges. Through it all, their bond remained unshakable, a testament to the power of genuine connection. Years later, as they sat together at a corner table in one of Michael's cafes, they reminisced about the journey that had brought them here. From that fateful night in the office cafeteria to the thriving business Michael now owned, their story was a reminder that life's most meaningful moments often arise unexpectedly. They had started as two strangers from vastly different worlds, yet their shared humanity had bridged the gap between them. As they clinked their coffee cups in a silent toast, neither could deny the profound impact they'd had on each other's lives. Their friendship wasn't just a coincidence. It was destiny nudging them toward growth, purpose, and fulfillment. Even today, whenever Richard visits Corner Table, he can't help but smile at the irony of it all. A chance encounter in a cafeteria had led to a friendship that transformed both their lives. And though their roles had shifted, from janitor and CEO to cafe owner and retiree, the essence of their relationship remained unchanged. It was built on trust, respect, and a mutual appreciation for the beauty and simplicity. In a world obsessed with status and appearances, they had discovered something far more valuable: the ability to see beyond titles and connect as equals. As the years rolled on, Michael's cafe empire continued to grow, expanding into multiple locations across the city. Each new branch carried the same warmth and charm that had made Corner Table a beloved fixture in its original neighborhood. Yet despite his success, Michael remained humble, never forgetting the values that had driven him from the start. He still visited each location regularly, chatting with customers, training staff, and ensuring everything ran smoothly. His employees admired him not just as a boss, but as a mentor who genuinely cared about their well-being. Many of them credited Michael for helping them discover their own potential, much like how Richard had inspired him. Richard, on the other hand, embraced retirement with a renewed sense of purpose. Freed from the pressures of corporate life, he dedicated himself to mentoring young entrepreneurs, offering guidance based on his decades of experience. He traveled frequently, speaking at conferences and workshops, sharing stories of resilience, leadership, and the importance of staying grounded. But no matter where his journey took him, Richard always found time to return to Corner Table. It was more than just a cafe to him. It was a symbol of the friendship that had changed his perspective on life. Sitting at his favorite corner table, sipping coffee brewed by Michael himself, Richard often reflected on how far they'd both come since that first meeting in the office cafeteria. Their bond deepened over shared experiences, laughter, and even moments of vulnerability. One evening, as they sat together after closing hours, Richard opened up about something he rarely spoke of: regret. "You know," he began, staring into his cup, "for all the success I've had, there are things I wish I'd done differently." Michael listened quietly, sensing the weight behind Richard's words. "Like what?" he asked gently. Richard hesitated before continuing. "I spent so much of my life chasing goals, profits, promotions, accolades, that I lost sight of what really mattered: my family, my health, my happiness. I sacrifice so much for the sake of ambition. Michael nodded thoughtfully, understanding the sentiment. He too had once prioritized survival over fulfillment, working long hours at jobs that left little room for personal growth. But you're making up for it now, he said encouragingly. Look at everything you're doing, helping others, giving back. That counts for something. Richard smiled faintly, appreciating Michael's optimism. Maybe, he replied, but sometimes I wonder if it's enough. The conversation lingered in their minds long after the cafe lights were turned off. For Michael, it reinforced the importance of balance, a lesson he tried to instill in everyone around him. Success wasn't just about achieving goals, it was about finding harmony between work and life, ambition and contentment. And for Richard, opening up to Michael provided a sense of closure, allowing him to confront past regrets without judgment or shame. Their friendship had become a safe space where honesty thrived, unburdened by pretense or expectation. Over time, Richard's mentoring efforts bore fruit. Several young entrepreneurs he had guided went on to launch successful ventures, crediting Richard for teaching them the value of perseverance and authenticity. One such individual was Sarah, a former intern who had struggled to find her footing in the competitive world of tech startups. With Richard's support, she developed an innovative app designed to connect local artisans with customers worldwide. When her business gained traction, she invited Richard and Michael to the launch event. Watching her deliver a heartfelt speech thanking Richard for believing in her, Michael felt a swell of pride. Not just for Sarah, but for Richard, whose wisdom had touched countless lives. Meanwhile, Michael faced challenges of his own as his cafe chain expanded. Managing multiple locations required juggling logistics, finances, and staffing issues, tasks that tested his patience and problem-solving skills. There were days when he questioned whether he had bitten off more than he could chew, but every time doubt crept in, he remembered Richard's advice. Focus on why you started. Those words became his anchor, reminding him that Corner Table wasn't just a business, it was a dream born out of passion and perseverance. With renewed determination, he tackled each obstacle head-on, learning valuable lessons along the way. One particular challenge stood out, a dispute with a supplier that threatened to disrupt operations across all branches. Frustrated and overwhelmed, Michael reached out to Richard for guidance. Over lunch at Corner Table, they brainstormed solutions, weighing pros and cons until they devised a strategy. Sometimes problems aren't just obstacles, they're opportunities to innovate, Richard said wisely. Inspired by this perspective, Michael negotiated directly with alternative suppliers, securing better terms while strengthening relationships within the industry. The crisis ultimately strengthened his resolve, proving that adversity could lead to growth. Despite their busy schedules, Michael and Richard made it a point to prioritize their friendship. Whether it was catching up over coffee or attending events together, they cherished the moments they shared. One tradition they maintained was celebrating milestones, both big and small. When Michael opened his 5th cafe, Richard surprised him with a plaque engraved with the words "Corner Table, where dreams take flight." Tears welled up in Michael's eyes as he thanked Richard for his unwavering support. "This wouldn't have been possible without you," he said sincerely. Richard shook his head, smiling. "You give yourself too little credit. You're the one who made it happen." Their camaraderie extended beyond personal achievements, influencing those around them as well. Employees at Corner Table often remarked on the positive energy Michael exuded, attributing it to the strong support system he had in Richard. Similarly, mentees praised Richard for his humility and willingness to listen, qualities they believed stemmed from his friendship with Michael. Together, they created a ripple effect, inspiring others to pursue their dreams with courage and integrity. As their influence grew, so did their desire to give back to the community. Michael launched initiatives aimed at supporting underprivileged youth, providing scholarships and internship opportunities through partnerships with local schools. Richard joined forces with him, leveraging his network to amplify these efforts. They organized fundraisers, hosted workshops, and collaborated with nonprofits to create programs that empowered the next generation. Their combined impact was undeniable, earning them recognition not only locally but nationally. Even amidst their accomplishments, Michael and Richard remained grounded, refusing to let success alter who they were. They continued to meet regularly at Corner Table, their conversations ranging from lighthearted banter to deep reflections on life. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset through the cafe windows, Richard posed a question that caught Michael off guard. "Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been if we hadn't met that night in the cafeteria?" Michael paused, considering the hypothetical scenario. "Honestly, I don't want to imagine it," he admitted. "Meeting you changed everything, for the better." Richard chuckled softly, raising his coffee cup. "To unexpected friendships," he toasted. Michael grinned, clinking his cup against Richard's. "And to second chances," he added. In that moment, surrounded by the hum of distant conversations and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, they acknowledged the profound impact they'd had on each other's lives. Their journey, from strangers in a cafeteria to lifelong friends, was a testament to the power of connection, proving that meaningful relationships can arise in the most ordinary of places. Years later, when people asked Michael about the inspiration behind Corner Table, he always told the same story of a janitor and a CEO bonding over sandwiches and coffee in a quiet cafeteria. It was a tale of unlikely friendship, resilience, and the belief that anyone, regardless of their background, could achieve greatness with the right support. And for Richard, the memory served as a reminder of the humanity behind every role, no matter how grand or modest. Together they had proven that titles didn't define a person. It was the choices they made, the connections they forged, and the dreams they dared to chase that truly mattered. Even today, whenever Richard visits Corner Table, he can't help but marvel at how far they've come. From that first awkward encounter to the thriving legacy they've built together, their story is a beacon of hope for anyone seeking purpose and fulfillment. As they sit side by side, reminiscing about the past and dreaming of the future, one thing remains clear. Their friendship isn't just a coincidence, it's a gift they'll treasure forever. As the years went by, Michael and Richard's lives continued to evolve in ways neither could have predicted. Their friendship had become a cornerstone of their existence, shaping not only their personal journeys but also the lives of those around them. For Michael, running Corner Table was more than just a business. It was a mission to create spaces where people felt seen, heard, and valued. Each cafe he opened carried the same ethos: kindness, inclusivity, and community. The walls were adorned with local artwork, the shelves stocked with books donated by patrons, and the tables often hosted lively discussions among strangers turned friends. It wasn't uncommon for customers to linger long after finishing their meals, drawn not just by the food, but by the sense of belonging the cafes fostered. Richard, on the other hand, found profound joy in his post-retirement endeavors. His mentoring program had grown into a nationwide initiative, reaching aspiring entrepreneurs from all walks of life. He traveled extensively, speaking at universities, startup incubators, and community centers, sharing stories of resilience and innovation. But what truly set him apart was his ability to listen. Unlike many high-profile figures who focus solely on offering advice, Richard made it a point to understand each individual's unique challenges and aspirations. This approach earned him immense respect, particularly among younger generations, who saw him not as an untouchable icon, but as a relatable guide. Despite their differing paths, Michael and Richard remained inseparable, finding time to catch up no matter how hectic their schedules became. One tradition they upheld was meeting every Friday evening at the original Corner Table location. These gatherings were sacred, time to step away from their responsibilities and simply be present with each other. They would sit at their usual corner table, sipping coffee and discussing everything from global events to personal reflections. On one such evening, as rain drizzled against the windows, Richard shared something unexpected. "I've been thinking about writing a book," he said casually, stirring sugar into his cup. Michael raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "A book? About what?" About us, Richard replied with a smile. Our story, how two people from completely different worlds came together and changed each other's lives. Michael laughed, shaking his head. Who'd want to read about that? You'd be surprised, Richard countered. People crave authenticity. They're tired of polished narratives and perfect endings. Our story is real. It's messy, unpredictable, and full of lessons. That's what makes it worth telling. The idea took root, and over the next few months, Richard began working on the manuscript. He interviewed Michael extensively, capturing anecdotes, insights, and emotions that brought their journey to life. Together, they revisited memories, their first meeting in the cafeteria, the late-night conversations, the challenges they faced, and the victories they celebrated. Writing the book became a collaborative effort, strengthening their bond even further. By the time it was published, titled Corner Table Chronicles, An Unlikely Friendship, it had transformed into more than just a memoir. It was a testament to the power of connection, vulnerability, and second chances. The book resonated deeply with readers, quickly climbing bestseller lists and sparking widespread conversations about mentorship, empathy, and breaking societal barriers. Media outlets clamored to interview Richard and Michael, eager to hear firsthand how their friendship had unfolded. While Richard handled most of the publicity due to his comfort in the spotlight, Michael stepped forward during key moments, sharing his perspective with humility and grace. Their appearances inspired countless individuals, proving that meaningful relationships could transcend differences and create lasting impact. One particular segment of the book gained significant attention, a chapter detailing the night Michael first showed Richard his cafe sketches. Readers were moved by the raw emotion captured in those pages, highlighting how a simple act of encouragement could ignite someone's dreams. Inspired by this, schools and organizations began incorporating the book into their curriculums and training programs, using it as a tool to teach leadership, teamwork, and the importance of believing in others. Even businesses adopted its principles, fostering cultures rooted in collaboration and mutual support. Meanwhile, Michael used the platform the book provided to advocate for causes close to his heart. He launched a foundation aimed at supporting underprivileged youth, offering scholarships, mentorship programs, and access to resources that could help them pursue their ambitions. Richard joined forces with him, leveraging his network to amplify the foundation's reach. Together, they organized annual fundraisers, drawing attendees from diverse backgrounds, united by a shared vision of empowerment. These events became highlights of the year, blending entertainment, education, and philanthropy in a way that left lasting impressions on participants. Their combined efforts didn't go unnoticed. Awards and accolades poured in, recognizing both their individual contributions and their collective impact. Yet neither Michael nor Richard let the praise inflate their egos. Instead, they viewed it as validation of their mission, to inspire others to dream boldly and act compassionately. At a gala honoring their achievements, Michael delivered a heartfelt speech that encapsulated their philosophy. Success isn't measured by titles or trophies, he said, looking out at the audience. It's measured by the lives we touch and the legacy we leave behind. And if our story can remind even one person to believe in themselves and others, then we've done our job. Richard stood beside him, nodding in agreement. When it was his turn to speak, he added, "Life is unpredictable. You never know when a chance encounter will change your trajectory. What matters is how you choose to respond, whether you embrace opportunities to grow, connect, and make a difference." That's the lesson I've learned from Michael, and I hope it's one you'll carry forward. The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing the admiration and gratitude people felt toward the duo. But for Michael and Richard, the true reward lay in knowing they had sparked positive change. Their partnership exemplified the beauty of synergy, how two individuals pooling their strengths and experiences could achieve far more than they ever could alone. Back at Corner Table, life continued as usual. Despite the fame and recognition, Michael ensured the cafe retained its cozy charm. Regulars still occupied their favorite spots, chatting animatedly or quietly reading. Newcomers marveled at the welcoming atmosphere, unaware of the extraordinary story behind its creation. Richard visited often, sometimes bringing friends or colleagues curious to experience the legendary cafe. Watching them interact with staff and customers, Michael couldn't help but smile. The cafe had become a living embodiment of their friendship, a place where connections flourished and dreams took flight. Even as their public profiles grew, Michael and Richard prioritized staying grounded. They avoided letting success alter their core values, always remembering the lessons they had learned along the way. For Michael, it was about gratitude, for the opportunities he'd seized, the obstacles he'd overcome, and the unwavering support Richard had provided. For Richard, it was about humility, recognizing that true fulfillment came not from accolades but from making a tangible difference in people's lives. One evening, as they sat together at their corner table, Richard posed a question that lingered in the air. "Do you think we've done enough?" Michael looked at him surprised. "Enough? We've barely scratched the surface." Richard chuckled, though there was seriousness in his tone. "I mean, do you think we've made the kind of impact we set out to make?" Michael thought for a moment before responding. "Impact isn't something you measure once and call it done. It's ongoing. Every person we inspire goes on to inspire others. It's like ripples in a pond. They keep spreading, farther than we'll ever see. So yeah, I think we've done enough for now, but there's always more work to be done." Richard nodded, satisfied with the answer. "You're right. There's always room to grow, to give back, to try harder. As long as we keep showing up, I think we're on the right track." Their conversation shifted to lighter topics, laughter filling the quiet cafe. Outside, the city buzzed with activity, oblivious to the profound exchange taking place within those walls. For Michael and Richard, these moments were precious, a reminder that amidst the chaos of life, true connection remained a constant source of strength and inspiration. Years later, when asked about the secret to their enduring friendship, they gave the same response: honesty, trust, and a willingness to embrace vulnerability. They believed that authentic relationships required effort, patience, and an openness to learning from one another. Their story served as proof that friendships weren't bound by age, background, or status. They thrived on shared values, mutual respect, and a commitment to growth. Today, Corner Table stands as a symbol of hope and possibility, a testament to the transformative power of dreams and determination. And while Michael and Richard may have started as unlikely companions, their journey has become a beacon for anyone seeking purpose, connection, and meaning. In a world often divided by differences, their friendship reminds us that humanity is our greatest equalizer, and that the simplest acts of kindness can lead to extraordinary outcomes. Years passed, and the legacy of Michael and Richard's friendship continued to grow, touching lives in ways neither of them could have imagined. Their story had become a beacon of hope for people from all walks of life: students dreaming of brighter futures, professionals seeking balance and fulfillment, and communities striving to foster deeper connections. The principles they embodied, authenticity, perseverance, and compassion, resonated universally, transcending age, background, and circumstance. Yet despite their widespread influence, Michael and Richard remained steadfastly grounded, refusing to let fame or recognition overshadow the values that had guided them from the beginning. Michael's cafe chain, now spanning multiple cities, became synonymous with warmth and community. Each location was designed not just as a place to eat, but as a sanctuary where people could gather, share stories, and find solace. Patrons often remarked on the welcoming atmosphere, crediting it to the genuine care Michael instilled in his staff. He believed that every customer deserved to feel valued, whether they were regulars or first-time visitors. This philosophy extended beyond business practices. It shaped the very essence of Corner Table. From hosting free workshops for aspiring entrepreneurs to organizing charity drives for local shelters, Michael ensured that his cafes gave back as much as they received. Richard, meanwhile, devoted himself to mentoring the next generation of leaders. His program, initially focused on helping young entrepreneurs, expanded to include individuals from diverse fields, artists, educators, activists, and more. What set Richard apart was his ability to adapt his advice to suit each person's unique journey. He understood that success looked different for everyone and encouraged mentees to define it on their own terms. Stories of transformation poured in from across the country. A struggling musician who found confidence to perform publicly, a teacher inspired to start an after-school program for underprivileged children, a single mother empowered to launch her own catering business. These victories fueled Richard's passion, reminding him why he had chosen this path. Despite their busy schedules, Michael and Richard never lost sight of what mattered most: their friendship. They made it a point to meet regularly, carving out time amidst their demanding commitments. Whether it was sharing a quiet meal at corner table or taking long walks through the city streets, these moments allowed them to reconnect and reflect. One evening, as they strolled along a park lined with golden autumn leaves, Richard turned to Michael with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever wonder what's next?" he asked. Michael raised an eyebrow, curious. "What do you mean?" "I mean for us," Richard clarified. "We've accomplished so much together, but I can't help feeling like there's still more we're meant to do." The question lingered between them, sparking a conversation about purpose and potential. For Michael, the answer lay in expanding Corner Table's reach. He envisioned creating mobile units that could bring food and resources to underserved areas, ensuring no one went hungry or felt forgotten. For Richard, it was about scaling his mentoring efforts globally, leveraging technology to connect with aspiring changemakers around the world. As they brainstormed ideas, excitement bubbled within them, reigniting the spark that had driven them from the start. Their shared vision led to the creation of a joint initiative called Cornerstone Connections. Combining Michael's expertise in building inclusive spaces with Richard's knack for empowering others, the project aimed to bridge gaps in communities worldwide. Mobile cafes equipped with kitchens and classrooms traveled to remote villages, offering meals alongside educational workshops. Local leaders were trained to sustain these initiatives, ensuring long-term impact. Meanwhile, online platforms provided mentorship opportunities, connecting mentors like Richard with mentees eager to learn and grow. Together, they proved that collaboration could amplify individual efforts, creating ripples of change far beyond their immediate circles. The success of Cornerstone Connections solidified Michael and Richard's status as pioneers of social innovation. Invitations poured in from international organizations, governments, and universities, eager to learn from their model. Despite the accolades, they approached each opportunity with humility, emphasizing the importance of grassroots involvement. "Change doesn't happen from the top down," Michael often said during speeches. "It starts with listening, understanding, and working hand in hand with those affected." Richard echoed this sentiment, adding, "Empowerment isn't about giving someone a solution, it's about equipping them to create their own." Even as their work gained global recognition, Michael and Richard stayed true to their roots. They visited the original Corner Table location frequently, finding comfort in its familiar surroundings. Staff members affectionately referred to them as the heartbeats of the cafe, knowing that without their friendship none of their achievements would have been possible. Customers marveled at how approachable they remained, always willing to chat or offer encouragement. For many, seeing Michael and Richard interact was a masterclass in humility and mutual respect. One particular day stood out, a rainy afternoon, when an aspiring writer named Emily walked into Corner Table clutching a notebook filled with half-finished poems. She hesitated near the entrance, unsure if she belonged in such a vibrant space. Spotting her uncertainty, Michael greeted her warmly and invited her to sit at the counter. Over coffee, he learned about her dreams of publishing a book, but admitted she lacked confidence. Sensing an opportunity, Michael introduced her to Richard, who happened to be visiting that day. By the end of their conversation, Emily left with tears in her eyes, not of sadness but of gratitude. Both men had taken the time to listen, offering advice and reassurance that reignited her belief in herself. Months later, she returned to the cafe, proudly presenting them with a copy of her debut poetry collection. Stories like hers reminded Michael and Richard why they did what they did, to inspire others to embrace their potential. As they grew older, Michael and Richard began reflecting on the legacy they wished to leave behind. They knew their physical presence wouldn't last forever, but their impact could endure through the systems and values they had built. To ensure this, they established a foundation dedicated to nurturing authentic relationships and fostering environments where people felt safe to dream and take risks. Named Legacy Links, the organization focused on 3 pillars: mentorship, community building, and sustainable development. Funds raised supported projects aligned with these goals, from constructing community centers to funding scholarships for underrepresented groups. Their final collaborative project was perhaps their most ambitious yet, a documentary chronicling their journey and the ripple effects of their friendship. Filmmakers captured candid interviews, archival footage, and testimonials from individuals whose lives they had touched. The film premiered at a prestigious festival, receiving standing ovations and critical acclaim. Critics praised its raw honesty and universal themes, calling it a love letter to humanity. For Michael and Richard, however, the real reward came from hearing viewers describe how the story resonated with them personally. Many vowed to prioritize connection over competition, kindness over judgment, and action over apathy. In their twilight years, Michael and Richard slowed down, savoring the simplicity of everyday life. They spent mornings walking through parks, afternoons reading books side by side, and evenings reminiscing about their adventures. Though their pace had changed, their spirits remained undiminished. They continued mentoring young leaders, attending corner table events, and supporting causes close to their hearts. Their friendship served as a living testament to the idea that meaningful relationships require effort, patience, and a willingness to grow together. When Richard passed away peacefully in his sleep, Michael felt a profound void. Yet even in grief, he found solace in the memories they had created and the legacy they had built. At Richard's memorial service, held at the original corner table location, friends, family, and admirers gathered to celebrate his life. Michael delivered a heartfelt eulogy, recounting their journey from strangers in a cafeteria to lifelong companions. "Richard taught me that titles don't define us," he said, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. "What matters is how we treat others, with kindness, humility, and unwavering belief in their potential. That's the man I'll remember forever." In the years that followed, Michael carried Richard's lessons forward, dedicating himself to preserving their shared mission. He expanded Legacy Links, ensuring its programs reached even more communities. He also wrote a follow-up book, detailing the challenges and triumphs of continuing their work without Richard by his side. Titled Carrying the Torch, it served as both a tribute and a call to action, urging readers to honor loved ones by embodying their values. The response was overwhelming, with countless individuals pledging to adopt similar approaches in their own lives. Today, Corner Table remains a symbol of hope and possibility, a testament to the transformative power of dreams and determination. And while Michael may have started as a janitor and Richard as a CEO, their story reminds us that labels are irrelevant when it comes to forging deep, meaningful connections. A